Hello there and welcome to Unqualified Opinions for this week's episode of Weekly Pick'ems. I'm Marco Yerkovich. I'm also joined today by Paul Hires and Will Byerman. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your own unqualified opinions in the comments section down below. Let us know who you think's going to win each of these picks. Before we get started though, it's time for everybody's favorite mini segment, Just the Numbers with Paul Hires.
And last week's pick'ems were not good, to say the least. That's an understatement.
The worst ever.
The worst ever by a margin of 24%. That's right. 16% winning percentage last week for us in what would be the worst case scenario of our picks last week. We went 5-25.
Still a better winning percentage than the Jets.
5-25, that's 16%. Just unbelievable. Three of us didn't even get one right.
Shout out to me, Tim, and Paul.
Let's get into the standings as everyone gets dragged down by this week of pick'ems.
Except Joseph.
Tim at 23-27 now, going 0-5 last week. Marco at 24-26, going 0-5 last week. Will takes fourth at 26-24. His only win was Florida over Georgia. Jared 29-21 at 1-4 last week. I went 0-5 for the first time, I believe, in the history of our pick'ems games. I'm tied with Jared in second at 29-21. And Joseph actually had a decent week with the 3-2 record at 34-16. He's up at the top, 18-5 in the NFL as well. And Joseph had 3 of the 5 wins that we had this week. So that is just absolutely pathetic. I mean,
it was so abysmal all Saturday and all Sunday while I was watching the games. Things just got worse and worse. Not just for me. I mean, a couple of us went 0-5, but for everyone, like you said, 5 cumulative wins between 6 of us.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
If we want to break down a specific game in the Saints and the Buccaneers, we actually picked the first matchup between those two teams earlier this season, and everyone picked the Saints except for Will, and the Saints ended up winning that one. This time around, everyone picks the Buccaneers, but Joseph and the Saints win again.
Even though the Saints won the first time, we forgot about that game, I guess.
Not to mention, I think everyone's opinion of the Buccaneers changed, and the Saints blew them out even more than they did the first week.
Absolutely, and this also goes to show that I tell you guys every single time, when there's a clean sweep that we choose, bet against it. It happened again this week with Notre Dame defeating Clemson.
Yeah, so clean sweeps down to 7-7 for the season. That's 50%.
That's 50%. That's a coin flip.
That is absolutely
We are no better than
terrible.
A coin flip when we unanimously make a decision. That's terrible. So yeah, let's get into the weekly pick'ems. First up, another homer game. It's Penn State, the Nittany Lions at the Nebraska Cornhuskers, Saturday at 11 a.m. on ESPN. Jared and Joseph going with Penn State, while Tim is picking Nebraska. Will, who's your pick in that one?
I really want to pick Nebraska again, but I think I talked about last week how even picking them against Northwestern feels unsafe. It felt like the right thing to do then. That would not be the case after this week. I'm just lucky that Kyle Trask pulled me out of an 0-5 week, giving me that one win. So I'm just going to try to play it safe this week. Penn State may be 0-3, but I think there's got to be some turnaround for them. So I'm going to take them.
Yeah, gut decision would be to go with Penn State on this one. They've been the better team, not only this year, but over the last 5 to 10 years. It just hasn't looked that good for Nebraska. But here's what I want to point out. Week 1, Northwestern handed Maryland a huge loss on that first week. And Maryland just knocked off Penn State. So if Nebraska was as close as they were to beating Northwestern, by the transitive property, they would have the advantage over Penn State.
Paul, I do have to raise a point to you. While there is the comparative matchup of Northwestern, there is also the direct comparative of Ohio State, in which we lost by, 35, and they lost by, 13 or something?
If I can throw one other thing at you too, Paul. We've seen Talia Tagovailoa in Maryland just go absolutely nuts since that first game. So I feel like Maryland isn't a good comparison because I think it's already a very different team than the one Northwestern played week
I
one.
think the only thing I'd have to say, Paul, is that like your comparisons are great and they get you great records, but the Big Ten is a mess right now. So I think it's hard, but go ahead and make your pick.
The point is I'm struggling to try and back up my decision
To rationalize your bias.
But here's a point that I don't think we can argue too much. I think we've proven time and time again that Nebraska's offense in the last few years can move the ball against any opponent they want to. The problem occurs when they try to score, and they just can't score. They're going to have to do that to win this game. I'm going to pick them to win this game because I just can't bear to pick them losing to an 0-3 team, but we'll see what happens. I'm going to Nebraska.
The one advantage I'd say Nebraska has in this game is they have two semi-competent quarterbacks, while Penn State only has one semi-competent quarterback. So if that's an advantage, then let's go ahead and mark it in the Huskers' corner. As far as everything else, though, just looking at the way Penn State played Ohio State, it was a semi-competitive game. They had Ohio State on their heels, made them actually worried. And while you can say that, Nebraska made some poor decisions against Ohio State and had some bad luck, and then a couple late touchdowns kind of padded the score, the way Penn State played Ohio State was a completely different class. And I tend to believe that maybe this Maryland game was just a fluke. Again, it's so early in the season and teams are so raw and unpracticed. It's really hard to determine what a team is. So I think I'll just have to go with Penn State just because they have the competition edge. They have the talent edge. So going to another Big Ten game that has so much importance. I don't understand how this game is so important. This could almost end up becoming the de facto Big Ten West championship game if Wisconsin gets another game canceled. It's Northwestern, the Wildcats, at the Purdue Boilermakers, Saturday at 6:30 p.m. on BTN. Jared is going with Purdue, while Joseph and Tim are going with Northwestern. Will, who's your pick in that one?
I always trust Jared a lot with college football picks, but I think Northwestern was pretty impressive against Nebraska because Nebraska at least has a lot of talent. And they were able to cancel out that offensive talent. Their defense looked really good. And Patrick Ramsey, their quarterback, his stats aren't great. 511 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 picks. But I think he's an above-average quarterback in their league. Their running game the running game went pretty well for them. I just think Northwestern, they're not going to be a sexy team this year, but they're going to be good when I think they can take Purdue here.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think Northwestern kind of plays to their opponents, whether that's just Nebraska or every other team that they play. It seems like they play down or up to their opponents. But I think with this Northwestern team, the thing is they haven't given up a point in the second half. And, some people say, well, that's just a coincidence. But let's be honest, they have a good defense. 12 points per game in their first 3 games. Both of these teams have a close win over Iowa. And, Purdue struggled against Illinois. I think it's safe to point that out. I don't know if they would have won if they would have played Wisconsin. And I think because of that, I think Northwestern is the better team, and I think they get the job done on the road.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and call it right now. The winner of this game is the Big Ten West champion. Just considering the winning percentage edge and the total games edge will go to the winner of this game more than likely over Wisconsin. Something else people aren't talking about with Wisconsin also is the fact that they had 2 games canceled due to their own COVID outbreak, and you have to play at least 6 conference games, and so we're already down to 6. If Wisconsin loses another game, but they're no longer controlling their own destiny, not only from a game perspective, but from a participation perspective. If a team that they are scheduled to play has a COVID outbreak and that game gets canceled, then Wisconsin gets eliminated even if they have their own outbreak under control. So that's a point to be made. Northwestern would almost probably be they're better off not playing Wisconsin in many respects. But as far as this game, I agree with all of your guys' points. I think Northwestern overall has had the better resume and play style. It's impressive. They've, like you said, 12 points per game, no points in the second half. I'm not totally convinced with Purdue, especially after the way you look at how they played Illinois. It's not convincing at all. I know Jared probably has faith in the Illini, but no one else does. So I'll go with Northwestern on this one. So that's it for our college football pick'ems. So let's move into the NFL, where we have the Buffalo Bills at the Arizona Cardinals, Sunday at 3 p.m. on CBS. Jared picking the Bills, while Joseph picks the Cardinals. Tim also picking the Bills. Will, who's your pick in this one?
After all the amount of time that I've talked up the Bills this year and went to bat for Josh Allen on the show, I really should have stuck with my guys last week because they looked absolutely dominant against a good Seattle offense and a notably terrible Seattle pass defense. The Cardinals don't have a great pass defense either, and I think Josh Allen, Kyler Murray looks like a really bright future talent for the league, but I think Josh Allen's closer to being there now. And I think the Bills defense can outplay the Cardinals defense too. I think all in all, I think the Bills should take this one. They just need to take their momentum from last week into this game.
Yeah, both of these two teams have given the Seahawks their 2 losses. I think that's a huge thing to look at. And but if you also look at some of the other common opponents, the New York Jets were blown out pretty much by the Cardinals 30-10. Not so much by the Bills, 18-10 on that one. So looking at those common opponents, Arizona kind of looks like the better team. But if you look at the 2 Bills losses, Tennessee and Kansas City are not looking that bad as far as losses go. I think the Bills have really hit their stride, beating the Seahawks last week by 10 points. Will said it. I think Josh Allen is really becoming kind of the quarterback that the Bills have wanted in the last few seasons. Kyler Murray is the leading rusher, believe it or not, on both teams. I think that's going to be something to look at, to watch for Kyler Murray's running game as well as his passing game. But I think the Buffalo Bills take it.
So the Arizona Cardinals are number 1 in the league in total offense, while the Bills are a bit middle of the pack. And you guys did raise the point that Arizona is not the best defensive team, but they actually only rank 1 spot below the Bills in defensive efficiency in the league. They're both middle of the pack defense-wise. I think Kyler Murray actually might be a better decision maker, and he, especially when it comes to taking off to run. He's a far better and more efficient runner than Josh Allen is. I also tend to trust the receiving core and running backs of Arizona more than I do Buffalo. Buffalo has been struggling the past few weeks after some close wins, and then of course you mentioned those losses. Well, those are good losses. You have to beat good teams, and I tend to believe Arizona is a good team that was able to beat a team like Seattle in a more convincing fashion than Buffalo did, despite the score being closer. I think Arizona was able to dominate that game more.
Arizona was also handed a defeat by the Detroit Lions in week 2. Not really relevant here, but
yeah, these teams are.
We're a Lions-loving podcast, and at least 1/6 of us are, and we have to make that fact known.
Not to mention, looking at the Cardinals' losses, the Dolphins, the Panthers, and the Lions. Think about that.
Dolphins are looking good, and the Panthers are a competitive team. I also have to trust in the leading pickmeister, Joseph Farina. I think that's also another factor. Very unconfidently going with the Cardinals. Very unconfidently. Our last pick of the day, the Seattle Seahawks at the Los Angeles Rams, Sunday at 3:30 p.m. on Fox. Jared going with the Rams, Joseph going with the Seahawks, and then Tim going with the Rams. Will, who's your pick in that one?
I'm going to go with the Seahawks. I know they just had a tough loss to Buffalo, but the Rams do not have nearly the same offense that the Bills do. Jared Goff is right on the fence of being an above-average quarterback to an average quarterback. Smart money seems to be currently pointing toward him settling in closer to that average quarterback role. There's not much going on at running backs. Their Cam Akers, Malcolm Brown committee's been fine, not great. I just don't think there's a lot of punch on offense coming from the Rams, and if you're going to beat the Seahawks, you're going to have to score a lot.
I agree with that. I think the Rams kind of focus too much on the fact that their defense can kind of carry them to victories, and that's kind of been what they've done to this point in the season. But the common opponents, I can't avoid them on this one. Will mentioned the Seattle loss to Buffalo, but how about Los Angeles lost to Miami? We saw Seattle take care of them earlier in the season. San Francisco was a loss for the Rams, and Seattle just beat them 2 weeks ago by 10. I got to go with Seattle. They've just been more consistent overall, and if they lose this one, I probably won't be picking them anytime soon.
So I'm very cautious on my NFL picks this week. I'm not confident in either team. I feel like I'm picking the worst team in both respects, so I'm going with the Rams. I feel like they've maybe been more consistent. Seattle is so up and down, and their defense is so leaky. Anybody can hang 30, 40 points on them, and I tend to believe that the LA defense has a Pro Bowler at every level. You've got great guys all over the back end of that defense, too. I don't think the LA Rams offense is that incompetent. I think, Jared Goff is pretty average and he's a game manager, but he's got a pretty consistent running game and he's got weapons at wide receiver and tight end all over the place. I think he's got enough to manage it. Not super confident, but I'll go with the Rams. So that's it for our pick'ems. Again, only 4 this week. Not a whole lot of confidence in our picks, especially after last week going 5-25. So hopefully we can improve on that 16%. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your own unqualified opinions in the comment section down below. Thank you, and we'll see you guys next time.